BeastNet Podcast, sponsored in part by James Safety Services, OCR Buddy, and supported by the fitness community. Here we discuss all things fitness related, running, rucking, mental health and preparedness, and of course, obstacle course racing. Welcome to the BeastNet.
Hey everybody, it's Mike here on BeastNet, and today I got with me Nate. Nate, how you doing?
Good. It's sunny and warm in Hawaii, like always.
Yeah, well, I'll be there I'll be in Maui in 4 weeks, and then I'll be in Oahu in 5. So, because I'm coming over for the Spartan races again, but I'm taking a week in Maui beforehand.
Well, hopefully we won't have a hurricane this year that doesn't show up.
Hopefully, but yeah. But I'll be honest, that was probably my favorite trip to Hawaii. I have so many people that are like, really, you were there during a hurricane? I'm like, it really never happened. And it was a fun time because there was no races. There was nothing. You couldn't really go to any of the outings. So it was just hanging out and enjoying the people. You know, there was the one really, really drunk night that we ended up with you. And
that might have been my fault.
that was. It was funny because we went out to, because Calista was here in Washington. So me, Amber, Serena, and everything all met her for lunch one day. And we were talking about it. And I don't think Serena realized that really when we were at the bar afterwards, I'm like, they were closed. It was just because Nate was friends with them that they let us hang out and drink and like eat. Serena's like, really? I'm like, yeah. The place was closed.
Yeah. I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah.
So.
No. So how you been? How you been doing?
Good. Been getting back into training cycle again after Honu, after IRONMAN Hawaii 70.3. That went utterly terribly.
Did it? Well, you finished though, didn't you?
I finished, sort of.
Sort of.
Technically, I did not finish because of swim time cutoff. I managed to swim about 50% farther than I was supposed to, according to my GPS.
Oh.
So that, might have something to do with it.
Probably.
Yeah.
That's a little bit extra.
Yeah, I swam like almost 3,000 yards instead of the 2,000 yards I was supposed to. So.
Yeah. Well, that could explain the time.
But... Yeah. I missed the time cutoff by like a minute. So.
Oh. But you kept going, right?
Yeah. So I wasn't beyond the time period where they would cut me off of the course. So I made all the other time cutoffs, but it just kind of makes for a bad start to a race.
Yeah.
The bike portion, I don't know. It was high crosswinds, and it was kind of a new situation for me because I wasn't really sweating as much as I had realized. Yeah. A lot of it was just evaporating. And so I skipped the first aid station on the bike because I carry like a little more than a liter of just water and then liquid nutrition as well. Mm-hmm. And then I got to the second one. I was like, I got like a half a thing full. I can make it up to Haviv with this, and decided to go on. It's like, even if I run out, it shouldn't be that bad. And in hindsight, what I should have been doing is housing as much of that water as I could, because by the time I got up to the 30-mile aid station, I was dehydrated, not dying, but just kind of started to turn into a kind of a rough waste. And I realized that was how dehydrated it was when I drank like 2 bottles of water right off the back.
Yeah.
And then on the way back down, that's when I started to feel the effects of the dehydration. I was starting to fall asleep on the bike, which is a new situation for me. And it's a very strange situation doing, 30 miles an hour downhill and falling asleep.
Yeah,
and trying to. But I made it to the bike, and the run, it was kind of a run, just a rough day at that point.
Yeah. I can imagine. I've been close to that. I mean, when I did the trifecta weekend there, in 19, that's pretty much how I was. After the beast, I was so dehydrated and destroyed that the next day getting up and do the next 2 races was just, I did it, but it was just like, I don't even remember doing the sprint. Mm-hmm. I was just, brain was gone. I was fried, and it's that heat. It's the heat and humidity in Hawaii that gets you. And I mean, you live there, so it's a little different, but I mean, I live in in Washington. We have somewhat of the humidity, but usually not the heat. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that caught me a little off guard this past year, and I was a little disappointed in that. But you learn from it, move on with your day, and look towards next year. Look towards things I can learn for. I've got a Ironman Michigan 70.3 coming up in mid-September. I've got a Team RWB expedition in the Grand Canyon. We're running from in South Kebab down to Ribbon Falls and then back out Bright Angel.
Oh, nice.
That'll be about a 50K or so. So I'm training up for that. A lot of elevation trail running on the weekends right now.
Yeah, and that's what gets you, that elevation.
Yeah.
I did that a couple weeks ago in a event we call here the Sisu. It's a 24-hour event up in the trails. And I think I ended up with 30 miles and 6,000 feet elevation, but it was 110 degrees here that weekend.
Oof.
Yeah.
That's rough weather for that.
It was some rough weather for that, especially for someone who's not used to heat. I mean, it got me, reminded me of, what happens when I'm in Hawaii. So, but which I got coming up here soon. So, and I'm actually thinking next year, because I'm doing it for my first triathlon this month, but I'm just doing a sprint. Because my biggest worry is the swim. I'm not a good swimmer, so I've been practicing a lot of the swimming. But I'm thinking I might, if I don't do the 70.3 in Washington here this year, I may choose to do Hawaii next year. And instead of doing Spartan Hawaii next year, I may do Ironman Hawaii instead.
Well, if that's the choice you make, you should get on the registration soon because it's already in Tier 4 registration for their sales. So it'll sell out pretty quick here.
Yeah, I know. I need to get on that.
Too, so
I got to convince the wife though because of the cost. But
yeah.
Because that's the hard part is I've been doing the Spartans for so long. I always got them free, but this year is like the last year. I'm like, I'm not volunteering. I'm not doing any of that. So I'm like, I'm going to run. I run out of free races. My last 3 are in Florida. I'll be doing the December Spartans in Florida. And then after that, I don't have any free races. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do after that. I don't know if I'm going to keep doing, I'm not going to go for as many Spartans as I have been. It's going to pretty much, that's going to tail off. And then I'm going to start looking at, Ironman, stuff like that. Cause I want new challenges.
That's more or less how I ended up in triathlons anyway. I was looking for a training program that was less abusive on my body. I was running about 180 miles a month. And it was just, it wasn't undoable for me at the time. It's a lot of impact and a lot of work on your body. And so I started finding a training program that integrated a lot of stationary bike. And then one thing led to the other. And next thing you know, I'm doing triathlons. Just so you know, as far as triathlons go, though, I love the sport. You don't have to be an exceptionally strong swimmer, and that's typically a lot of people's weak spot because you find, I think, a lot more runners and cyclists that get into it.
Yeah.
Than you do find swimmers that get into biking and running in their spare time.
Yeah, I can see that.
The longer events, it's more about just keep moving, and you'll get through it.
That's kind of my thing that I've really been in my training because my biggest problem is the breathing. I'm a self-taught swimmer.
Mm-hmm.
I pretty much just jumped in the water and started swimming and figured it out. So I'm not good at the breathing. I like hold my breath and breathe like every 10th stroke.
See,
so by like the third one, I'm like,
yeah, man. Just honestly, right now, I'm not in any sort of good swimming shape in the last year. So I take about a breath a stroke set.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that. I'm comfortable with that. You're not sitting in the Olympics. I'm not going to podium at an Ironman.
I found too,
just getting that comfort zone is real easy for the swim then.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. I've been doing a lot of open water. I haven't been in a pool at all because I can't find any pools around here that are open. So I've just been doing a lot of open water and a cold lake that we have here. But one thing that I've worked on a lot is the normal crawl stroke I can do for a bit, but then when I get tired, I have the side stroke is my secondary. Mm-hmm. And honestly, the side stroke, what was funny is the person that's been helping me learn to swim, she's like, you're almost faster in the side stroke than you are in the crawl. And I'm like, yeah, but I can only do one. Sounds bad. I can only do one side. So my right arm gets really tired really quick, but it's a good secondary where if I'm having problems breathing, I know I have that to go to get my breathing back, and I can also do the breaststroke.
So that's actually one of the things that happened to me during the swim is I couldn't get my goggles to seal real well during about 3/4 of it. So I ended up most of it I was doing side stroke anyway.
Yeah.
And one of the things I will like, there's a lot of value in learning different types of strokes at triathlons. You don't know what the race day condition is going to be, especially in open water. If open water you have surf coming in from one side, it may be better for you to side stroke the whole thing, especially if you're not comfortable with bilateral breathing and front crawl.
Yeah.
The tricky thing with that is when you if it's an out and back or you make a turn, then you got to reevaluate which side you're breathing on. But you know, it's you get comfortable with it and work with it and work with what you have.
And I think that's the big thing. That's one thing I really learned over the last year is like with my fitness journey of trying to lose weight and all that stuff and all the running is I stopped looking at what other people were doing and trying to emulate it. It was more of, I don't need to do what that person's doing. I need to find out how to do this in the best way that I can for me. You know, and I see that with a lot of people. They're like, what shoes are you wearing? What are you doing? I'm like, I have these shoes because I went and had them checked. My running stride checked. I had all this checked, and these are the shoes that they said were good for me. You know, I ended up switching about halfway through the year because after losing the weight, I was having issues with the pair of shoes I was wearing. And what's funny is actually losing the weight, my foot got smaller. So I had to go to a smaller shoe size. So it's one of those things you have to keep evaluating as you go, because as your fitness changes, what you use can change too. And I think a lot of people are so stuck on having the next best thing or what this athlete's wearing or whatever, that it's like, no, find what works for you.
Oh, that's one of my favorite things I see at marathons all the time is I see people in the Nike 1%, the sub 2 setup, you know, and it's like, in order to really capitalize on that, you need to be running about a sub 8-minute mile on average to really capitalize on that. If you're running slower than that, like, yeah, there's some benefit, but really at some point in time, it starts to, your cadence and your body mechanics don't work well for that.
Yeah.
And they're designed for certain mechanics with that shoe. So, and it's great that you found that out early on, because, man, that took me probably a couple of years of running to figure out.
Well, I'd figured out the shoe part a while back when I was running about 10 years ago. I almost quit because I just kept getting horrible shin splints. And I was wearing Nikes because, you know, that's what you're supposed to do is wear the Nikes, you know, just do it. And I was like, I can't do this. And it was like 2 weeks before my first half marathon. And I went to a running store that I don't think is even there anymore. It was close by the house I used to live at. And I was like, I need help, you know, and asked them. And luckily the owner was an actual marathoner. And he's like, well, let me look at this. And he was talking to me and he was showing me and everything else. And he was like, you're wearing the wrong shoe. Like, what do you mean? I've got Nikes. These are supposed to be the best. He's like, no, you should really be wearing this shoe. And like showed me a Pearl Izumi. And I'm like, never even heard of these. And actually, I don't even think they make them anymore. But I haven't seen them in a while. But he handed me a Pearl Izumi. And I'm like, okay. And they were like,
I don't know if they're in the running shoe game anymore, but they're still a big cycling and triathlon name.
Okay. Yeah, but they were definitely, it was a running shoe. And I'm like, okay, I'll try it. And literally bought them a week before I was supposed to do a half marathon. Yeah. And I ran like twice, and then I went into the half marathon and not an issue with my legs at all. And I'm like, this is amazing, you know, and it really showed me. And after that, I became a real believer in going to just making sure that I had the right shoe for me. But then it kind of went that way with everything. You know, I kind of look at, you know, the right, you know, headphones, picking not just what other people were wearing, but looking at why would it benefit me to have this, you know?
Yeah.
And I found that's the best.
Yeah. It's, you know, I get that question a lot from some of my friends and other friends in running groups. Like, what do you think the best shoe is? And that's the reality of it. There's not, like, running equipment is, I mean, all athletic equipment now is so diverse that it's a matter of finding what fits you well and what you can use effectively.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and I think that's probably if I were to go back to 2015 when I got back into running, if I could tell myself one thing, that would be it very early on.
And that's the thing. I think if I could go back and tell myself anything about any of this, it's like, find the equipment that works for you. Don't just look at what everybody else is wearing and go with it. And sometimes it has to change. Like I'll be honest, I have a whole bunch of shoes upstairs for OCR. I have Innovates because I loved them. But then after my foot injury, I kept trying to wear them and I just couldn't because my foot's whiter now because of the injury. And Innovates are very narrow. So I had to switch to the Ultras. And now that I'm wearing the Ultras, I'm not getting the pain. My foot isn't falling asleep while I'm, doing an OCR race. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is a new feeling. I can feel it, so it's one of those, it's always adjusting. And I think that's one of the big problems is people either look at what other people have or they get so stuck on one thing that they're like, this is what I've used. This is what I've always used, and I hear it with nutrition, everything. I mean, I've got my crazy things I do for nutrition, but that's changed. It used to be, honestly, before a race, it was the night before I had a steak and a whiskey and Coke. That was my night before. Oh. Now it's, I'm a little less whiskey and a little less steak the night before and more kind of carb loading, but
sports dietetics is an interesting subject in general. One of my good friends, sports dietitian, and it's interesting because like that field in itself is so diverse in the manner that like similar to like normal dietetics at this point in time, it's like even within the community they can't really come to general consensus on what the right decision is for race strategies, and it all kind of comes down to a lot of experiment and figuring out like, hey, what sits well in your stomach, what works well, are you getting enough whole foods as far as what you're eating, and those are the big picture things, but it's a lot of trial and error, right? And it's back to that fundamental rule, like you don't change the plan on game day. What works the night before. That's fine.
And I've made that mistake where all of a sudden I'm like, hey, I'm going to try this on the day of the race. And then all of a sudden about halfway through the race, your stomach's like, hey, you should have done that. So yeah, no, I've been there on that one, but it is. It's one of those things that changed over time too. I mean, I had I'm still one, and a lot of people think I'm horrible for this. I won't eat the morning up. I
don't usually eat the morning of either.
I don't eat the morning up.
It's not usually that I can't, my stomach can't do it. It's just usually I'm in a little bit of a rush. And if I do, it's just something very minimal to get into my stomach. Like I'll have like maybe a banana or a half a bagel or just something to like kind of process. Actually, one of my favorite things to eat like right the morning of a race is chocolate covered coffee beans.
Nice.
Yeah. They're just like maybe a handful of them. It's great.
Nice.
Just get something in your stomach, a little sugar, a little caffeine.
I'm one of those ones, I'll drink a coffee beforehand. Usually maybe a coffee with a protein shake in it. And because that's what I use as my sweetener now. I'll use coffee with protein shake. And that's usually it before a race. But then if it's a longer race, I'll have a protein puck or two in my pack. And I'll eat those. Like when I did the marathon, I had a protein puck about halfway through.
So that's one of the things with my nutrition plans that have changed over the years. Actually, I started out with a lot of gels, and just because that was what was available on the course. I always started out with, I think, Powerade gels, and I'm kind of lucky because I still have kind of a cast iron stomach and they don't bother me. And it took me a while to find a gel that I was really happy with, and I've been very happy with Huma with the electrolytes, and it's a organic chia based supplement. But what I'm even more happy with is when you start doing trail events, especially like the Hawaii Ultra Running team out here. And even when I did the American River 50 miler, right? That's one of my favorite things about those events is when you come into an aid station, it's not like you're just kind of Joe Schmo that's there to run the race. Those are much smaller races. And when you come in, it's like you're the all-star there, right? You come in, there's like, oh, you just take your vest off. We'll get your water and everything. And you put electrolytes in it. Where are they? Go get some food, right? And it's great. And it's a blast there. I love peanut butter and jelly sandwiches on the race course.
Oh yeah.
And a little bit of vegetable stock or chicken stock is a really good late in the miles. And it's interesting because my nutrition plans have changed over the years as I've started to race longer and longer events because I've had to adapt it more. because what I will eat for a marathon, which maybe takes 5 hours at most, 6 hours if you're really dawdling behind for me right now. But like, what I'll eat for that, because like my body's not going to crave like solid food. It's not going to get hungry later in the day. But like during that 50 miler, oh yeah, I ran through about a checkpoint about mile 37, and someone had brought McDonald's cheeseburgers for one of their racers, and I was like, "That is the most delicious smelling thing. I got to get out of here right now."
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, that was me doing the Sisu. I mean, it was only 30 miles just because of the heat, but it was. I had made one of my favorite things that I eat a lot is I make wraps, which is really it's just like the freaking Laughing Cow like spreadable cheese on a tortilla with lunch meat. Roll that thing up. And then that's my quick grab. I can grab it even while I'm running. So if I'm doing a long event, that's usually what I'll have in my pack. That and like I said, the protein pucks, because I like they're just quick, easy, something I can grab. Yeah, like I said, when I did the marathon in June, that's all I had with me was the protein pucks. And I didn't even bring, because I knew that marathon, I knew there was a hydro station every 3 miles. Mm-hmm. That I didn't bring a pack. All I brought was like one little pouch that I could keep the protein pack in my phone in.
Yep. So you'll find that with most road races. That's one of the things that's interesting about road races to me is you'll find the aid stations usually right about every 3 miles. And there's a fundamental basis off of that they look at the time that the elites are going to run and how much hydration they need for that event, basically. And if you look at it, like we get some of the world's best out here in Honolulu for the chase. And, guys like Kapoge are going to run, like a 5-minute mile all day. Every day, easy, if not faster, right? And just cruise to that. So, I mean, if you look at how much time they're going between having like a little bit of water, it's, maybe 8 to 10 minutes, right? Yeah. That's not a long time to go out without water. But for those of us who are not running, Olympic speeds, that couple of miles is considerably longer. And it's something to consider. But that's something that's always nice to rely upon on road races, whereas I've run trail races, which I ran a 22-mile trail race with one aid station.
Yeah. And I've heard that
all the way at the 11-mile turnaround.
I've heard that about a few of them.
So that was interesting.
Yeah, it's like the one I did, the Sisu. They're flat out, and they let you know there are no aid stations. It's all self. You take care of yourself.
Self-supported.
So any mistakes that I had, that was my fault. I knew it was self-supported, and But I went out with 2 liters of water thinking I'm fine. And 15 miles in 110-degree heat, when you come out of 10 miles of that was with no tree cover, I was out of water long before I got back. And that was my own fault because I knew I was self-supported and I didn't do it right. But, like I said, on the one race I did, it was every 3 miles. But it was a rainy day, which most people say, oh, that's horrible. I'm like, no, it was beautiful. I loved it. It was a nice rainy, kept me cool the whole time. Just rain, not enough that I was soaked by the end from sweat and rain, but it was enough to cool me down the whole time. So, and I mean, I beat my best time by a long shot. So, I mean, when I was signed up for that race, I said I thought I was going to be about 6 hours on my marathon. I was 4:39. So nice. I was a little faster than I thought. But,
yeah. Actually, I mean, that's kind of some lessons learned that I picked up during Ragnar, which was really kind of my first self-supported multi-segment races, which was kind of interesting because they don't really have aid stations at all.
That's what I've heard.
And it's just like what you have with you. And between the two ones, like the trail events, you can make a lot fewer events or mistakes because you have, maybe a 6-mile loop if you're, at the longest, right? So if you're out there for an hour and a half, it's not the end of the world, right? But when I did the road race, the only road race in Hawaii I did, my first segment was 11.9 miles. And most of that was no van support, self-supported, no shoulder on the roads. It was a long uphill, about 2,000 feet of elevation in the middle of the day under the hot Kona, actually it was Hilo side, so Hilo sun. And that was a rough segment for me.
That sounds rough. That definitely sounds rough. And see, I wouldn't mind doing some of those. I want to do Ragnar. I missed the one over here. And then the one, of course, they have the trail race, but I'll be in Hawaii. So I'm missing that one. And then they have another one, but that's also in the same day I'm going to be down at another race in Bend, Oregon. So it's like, So next year I'm hoping to do Ragnar here, but we'll see. So.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm a little bummed that Ragnar's not in Hawaii anymore. And I get why they're not. They were struggling for profit time, and from a, I mean, at the end of the day, it's their business and they're trying to make money. But when all of your racers come from outside of 50 miles because you're running a race on an island that is 50 miles away from anything, there's not going to be a lot of volunteers.
No.
So I'm pretty sure they ended up having to pay people to help support some of the aid stations and things like that. And they didn't get the volunteer capacities that they wanted.
And I could see that, like you said, it's one of those that, I mean, when you're on Hawaii, I mean, it's one thing I'm sure, some of the other races struggle with is getting the volunteers, because most people that are going there for the race are going to race.
Mm-hmm.
Occasionally you get someone who's going to do one of the races and decides to volunteer during the others. But, like for me, I'm going there and I'm doing all three. I'm doing the trifecta weekend again.
Yep.
Because I want to actually finish it, not just I want to destroy it, not just like finish it because I'm in it as a zombie because I'm fried from 2 days of doing it. But and that's just it. It's hard to get those volunteers because, like I said, most people are just like, oh yeah, I'm here to race. I'm not here to volunteer. So it'll be interesting. So I'm wondering what it's going to be like this year. But like I said, I kind of want to do I think next year I'm going to focus more on the Ironman and some of the local races. I think, well, a lot of that depends too. This is my first triathlon. I'm thinking I'm going to enjoy it and I'm going to be okay with it, but this is the first time I've done it. So the bike riding.
Big picture triathlons are simple. I mean, don't drown, don't crash, don't trip.
Yeah, pretty much. No. I mean, I figure the 3 mile runs I've got down. The one thing I've done though is I'd never done the brick before. It's going from the bike and I did it the other day for the first time. Usually I do one or the other during the day. I usually don't do both. And the other day I'm like, well, let's see what we can do. And I only did like a 6 mile bike ride. And came back and I went to run and my legs are like, so just did not want to work right. I'm like, okay, this is going to be interesting. This is going to be the weird part, the transition from the bike to the run.
So two things about that is with the sprint distance triathlon, that's a lot more important. Those brick workouts are way more important because that adjustment period between bike and run or between swim and just getting vertical to get to transition one, you're at such a short distance that you really don't have time to get settled anymore.
Yeah.
Right. When I did the one sprint I've done, sprint distance triathlon, it was very strange because by the time I was settled swimming, it was like, oh, swim leg's done, time to get up. And by the time I felt settled on the bike, oh, headed back into transition two. And for that matter, I'm not real partial to sprint triathlons just because I have trouble getting settled amongst that.
And that's my problem that I'm having, because I figured out when I've gone for the swim, it's that first 15 minutes where I have problems, and then I kind of settle in after that first 15 minutes, and that's kind of what I feel like on the sprint. It's going to be like, okay, I'm settled. Oh, we're done. And I feel like that's going to be my issue. But it was one of those, I didn't want to jump straight into a 70.3. I figured I'd do a sprint first, try it out.
I mean, my first one was an Olympic, and it was abnormal because it was the race to base out here. So it starts on one side of the island, and then you bike up H3 and back down H3. So up and over a mountain, which is abnormal for a triathlon to begin with. Yeah. And then you run your 10K on the other end of the island. And anyway, you slice it, even if you do the sprint, you're still doing a long cycle segment.
Yeah.
But because of that, I really enjoyed that because, like I said, that's about the right distance I need to get settled into things and get comfortable.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing too, is I think if I decide I really enjoy this, I may go for a better bike, stuff like that. Like the bike that I have, it's pretty much, Amber's dad is insane about bicycles. He just buys random bikes at garage sales and then fixes them all up. And then sometime this summer, he'll probably have a garage sale and sell them all. It's just a weird thing that he does. So I just found one of the ones that he had that I liked, and it's a nice Trek. It doesn't hunch over, but I have issues with my back hunching over like that. So I would rather sit up straight for now, but I have a feeling that after a while, once I get used to it, I may want to start hunching over. But
So that's one of those big myths about triathlons is you do not need a super expensive, fancy triathlon bike to do triathlons.
That's
now
what I heard.
the longer distance that you get into, the more it's recommended. By the time you if you're gonna do a full Ironman, you probably should have one, right? Just because the sheer amount of energy savings that you have on those bikes is significant. But when you're at the shorter distances, even up to a half Ironman, I see a lot of people with road bikes with just clip-on aero bars, and that works fine for them.
Yeah, and that was it for me. It's just I found one of the ones he had that was comfy that I enjoyed. I was gonna actually switch to one of the other ones he had, and then Serena's wife Chris showed up and bought it from him. So I was like, "That's the one I wanted, Chris." But I like the Trek when I have, and I honestly I looked at it. It's actually one of the ones you'd be surprised. Some of the bikes he has out there are actually worth some money. I'm like, "How much did you pay for this?" He's like, $20. I'm like, "Okay." I mean, he's got a couple out there that I've looked at. And I've looked them up. I'm like, "Yeah, this is like a $500 or $600 bike." So, but
yeah, when I signed up for Ironman Texas, which is still on my radar, signed up in 2019 and to run it in 2020, and that got canceled. Then 2021 got deferred over, and that's where it's staying right now. But I'd already deferred to 2022 because of some of my work requirements as far as travel stipulations.
yeah.
But when I signed up for that, I actually started looking for a new bike that fit me better, that was triathlon specific, and that's how I ended up spending $7,000.
I think the wife would shoot me. That's her biggest thing. She's like, you got into the Spartan and it was expensive, and now all of a sudden you're going into triathlon, you're buying all this stuff, and now that's expensive. Because I have the tri suit, just because a transition when you're switching over. I mean, you don't want to get naked. I mean, nobody wants to see that.
Well, it's actually against the course rules.
Yeah, is it to get naked?
Yep. Yeah. It's the fastest way. It is the I don't want to say the easiest way to get disqualified, but it's the most certain way to get disqualified.
Definitely. Nobody wants to see that. So yeah, I got the tri suit, but then of course I have a wetsuit because we're in Washington and all the water here is cold. And I've been practicing in both of those. I've been making sure when I run, when I bike, when anything, I put on the tri suit to get used to that, that feeling. The only problem I have is I feel like I've gained some weight since I bought it. So I need to, starting to feel like 2 pounds of sausage in a 1 pound bag. So I got to figure that out. But
yeah. I mean, honestly, I do a little bit of work in my tri suits and then put them away and just train normally. So I have
that was it. I just wanted to try it out for a bit. I haven't been using. I've used it when I swim, but I haven't. I've only used it a couple times when I ran and bike, just to kind of get used to it, make sure it was, I was going to be able to wear it. I didn't want to, go on the day of, put it on and be like, oh, this is horrible.
The simple solution for the swim with a wetsuit is go on Amazon and find a cheap set of tri shorts. You can probably find them for $20. And get a pair of those, and then you can just wear those up to the wetsuit and reduce the wear and tear on your expensive tri suit.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. So I know the wetsuit even, it's just a cheap wetsuit that I spent $50 on. I bought it off Amazon. It's just a cheap, shorty, because I don't like the long ones anyway. So it's a shorty wetsuit, just something comfy that, it would help keep me a little warm. Because, the water's cold, but, I'm not going to be in it for an hour. So, I just need to make sure that it keeps me a little warm while I swim.
On the bright side, if you do Hawaii, if you race Hawaii, it's all Hawaii triathlons are no wetsuit allowed. So.
Oh, but why? Because, I get that because I've been in the water in Hawaii. You don't need a wetsuit.
It comes up in forums a lot. Is it going to be wetsuit legal? It's first off, the rules say no wetsuits because it's Hawaii. Second off, the water's going to be warm enough. You're not going to need it.
Yeah. I've never even thought of a wetsuit in Hawaii. Who's like, oh, I'm going to go in the water in Hawaii. I need a wetsuit.
Well, it's an open ocean swim. So it's salt water. So you have buoyancy there, plus the wetsuit buoyancy. Plus there is, with the tri-specific and swim-specific wetsuits, there is an added hydrodynamics that you will be a little faster. For most amateurs, I don't feel like it's significant. For some of the people who are trying to compete for Kona slots, that that might be the difference between, you know, your Kona slot and not. So.
Yeah, I can see that. So I can see that. Like I said, I definitely want to do it. I definitely want to do one over there. I want to do some more over there. So Amber still wants to live there. She's, I think, looking a little more towards Texas because of prices, but you know, Hawaii is still her dream. So if we move to Hawaii, you need to get us both better jobs because it's expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, even with my degree in safety and everything else, it's going to be expensive.
Yeah.
So if you were someone was gonna ask you and say, "Hey, I'm thinking of doing a triathlon," what would be your advice to a newbie?
I would pull the trigger, register for it, and just do it. You don't need a crazy bike setup, especially if you're gonna do like a sprint just to see if you like it, right? You know, you don't have to be the most, you don't have to be the fastest swimmer out there. I would say you want to be a little bit comfortable in the water so that you're not like, you know, you don't want to have a panic attack.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like I'm still a slow swimmer. I usually swim a little bit farther because I stick to the outside of turns, away from the crowds, towards the back of my starting heat if I can, just because that way I don't have to worry about people swimming over me or things like that. I usually get caught by the women's heats behind me. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I'll catch them all on the bike anyway, so.
And that's kind of my plan is I'm going to go for the outside and stay towards the back because it's my first one. I don't want to, you know, and that's what I hear the horror stories from everyone of, oh my God, I got this, you know, they ran over me and almost drowned me. And I'm like, oh, you know, for someone who's not a strong swimmer, I'm like, ah. So that was kind of what someone else told me, stay towards the back and off to the side and you'll be fine.
I'll say it has gotten a lot better in triathlons across the whole as a whole because what they've gone away from is the shotgun starts like that, with the exception of Kona. A lot of them have gone over to, especially the larger events, have gone over to a staggered start.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all based off chip time then. So you only have like 3 or 4 people starting at every 5 seconds or something like that. So it spreads the pack out a lot more, and you have to worry about that a lot less.
God, I hope this one I do does that because that's
smaller ones. A lot of times they'll do a shotgun start because it's a smaller heat and they can do it. But just stick to the back of the when you start and run your race. I've seen plenty of people, and I've seen plenty of people on a bike with like kind of the typical like hybrid, gravel bike where it's just kind of fat tires and a normal straight bar handlebar. And that's fine. I have friends that have done that and they enjoyed it and they had a great time with it. And I mean, I think that's why most of us race anyway. There's maybe 10% of the race is going to be really super competitive about things, but and depending on the race, but the amount of time and effort for me to try to qualify for something or podium on a lot of the events that I'm in is significant. I don't have that time to do that and work a full-time job and take care of my dog and the other things in life that I try to do. It's not going to work. So, I mean, I would just say, go out there, sign up, right? Put your training in and have fun with it.
Which honestly is kind of what I did. I just kind of signed up for it and been like, this is what I'm going to do. And after I signed up for it, what do I need to do this now that I've signed up for it? So, because it's been on my bucket list for years. And I keep telling myself, I'm going to do one. I'm going to do one. I'm going to do one. But I never. So finally I saw this one pop up and I'm like, hey, I'm signing up.
Oh, you also don't really need the crazy tri-suits either.
No.
It's definitely within the rules to do like a surfer change. So as long as you have like a changing towel, you can change it to that real quick. Well, that's pretty simple. Or just get like a kilt.
I wanted to look cool, but whatever.
Well, that's why I got my Team RWB one eventually.
Yeah, see, I've been talking because we have a whole bunch of stuff like Beast now. We have a bunch of stuff from Legendborn. And I've had Legendborn on, and I'm like, when are you making a tri-suit? No.
It's a whole different animal for most companies.
It is. I mean, they do because they do the jerseys, and I mean, I'll tell you, my Legendborn jersey, I love it. So
I was talking to we're fortunate out here. We have a gentleman named Dr. Michael Garrison. Some of your viewers may have heard of him. He's a longtime distance runner, endurance community athlete, racing full distance Ironmans back when it was, Speedos and tank tops.
Yeah.
was what they had.
That just sounds uncomfortable because nobody wants to see me in a Speedo and a tank top.
But that's what they had, and that was what was available, and that was what was effective. It was before all the new textiles came out, and before you had the nice chamois and the bike shorts and whatnot.
Yep.
So
nice. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to this, and I'm looking forward to being in Hawaii. And when I'm in Hawaii, we've got to have a drink.
Definitely.
So it's gonna be fun because actually the kid's gonna be with me too. So because this was supposed to be his graduation / 18th birthday present last year. So we're definitely gonna have some fun. But I get to go see Maui. I haven't been to Maui since I was 18. So I'm sure it looks the same. It's just an island, but
it's not a lot of things that changed there. Actually, there are 2 new locations of Waikiki Brewing Company out there.
Oh.
So.
Which Waikiki Brewing Company? That's where we hung out.
It is one of the fastest growing breweries on the island. They now have 4 locations amongst the island, and I think they were looking at a 5th possibly.
Nice.
So.
Waikiki's a good beer, good brewing company. They have good food and good beer. So. Right on. Well, it's been good talking to you. Is there anything else you wanted to say to the listeners?
No, I mean,
get out to Hawaii, enjoy it.
Yeah, come to Hawaii if you get a chance to race here. It's a great place to race. If you're ever questioning, like, I don't know, should I do this? Am I going to have fun with it and enjoy it? If you're questioning it, just pull the trigger and enjoy it, right? Do the train. That's how I got into ultra marathons. That's how I got into long distance triathlons. It's, at some point in time, you just pull the trigger and say, you know what, I'm going to do it. And if I succeed, great. And if I don't, it's not the end of the world. Hopefully I'll have fun and enjoy it. And that's really the important part.
Yeah, and learn from it and learn what I need to do next time. That was kind of my thing. It was one of those, I knew if I just kept telling myself someday, I was never going to do it. So it was finally like, I'm just pulling the trigger. So now that I've signed up for it, I kind of have to do it. So it's not someday. Now it's, July 25th.
Yep.
There's a day. That's the someday. So, but yeah, right on. Well, like I said, it was great talking to you, and I will hopefully see you in about a month.
Yep. Best of luck on your try, and I'll see you in about a month.
All right. I'll see you later, Nate.
All right. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Does your business need first aid, AED, OSHA, flagging, or other safety training? James Safety Services is your one-stop shop. Find them on Facebook today at James Safety Services WA and ask for a quote on hosting your training needs.
Thanks for listening to the BeastNet podcast. If you haven't done it yet, find us on Facebook, like and share the podcast. Give us a review on iTunes or Spotify. All these things will help to expand the show in the future. Don't forget to subscribe and let us know what you think and what you'd like to hear.